Hello everyone, I'm Jonathan Rasberry and I welcome you to another Rasberry chess video. Today we're going to be looking at a game between Boris Gulko and Ruslan Ponomariov. This game was in Pamplona in 1996. Now you may say this game is 20 years old, what can I learn from it? Well, first, Mr. Opening Theory Pants, don't just look at an old game and say you can't learn anything from it. Just because opening theory is not necessarily as accurate and the moves are not as accurate, doesn't mean we can't learn something from it, okay? What we can learn from this game is twofold, and this is what I want to showcase today. We're going to be looking at, first, not moving your pieces away from active squares. And I'm not just telling you this in a, 1,000 rated manner, don't move your piece from, the center of the board to the side of the board. No. We're talking about much higher level. We're talking about maybe moving a piece off an open file to attack a free pawn, or something like that, Maybe a pawn that you can even win. In fact, that happens in this game. And we're also going to talk about exchanging off attackers when you're attacking. Well, why in the heck would you ever do that? Well, it's counterintuitive, and we're going to talk about that today, so make sure you stay tuned. Okay, so this Boris Gulko, by the way, was white, and he started off with c4. e6 was played, knight to f3, c5, standard English, symmetrical English, g3, knight to f6, so black is playing in a standard queen's pawn type way, while white is playing a little bit more flexible, but he'll also transpose very quickly into just standard queen's pawn game. So white castled and black played knight to c6. Now, in case you're wondering, why can't black just get away with pawn takes c4? Well, first off, you should always be aware of this move as white. In the queen's gambit. I mean, it is a gambit, right? Sometimes you can take this pawn, especially when the pawn is on c6 and you haven't fianchettoed your bishop to the long diagonal. But in this case, the pawn on c4 is simply a goner. There's a couple of things you can do. One would be knight to a3, maybe queen to c2, or maybe even knight to e5. Point is, let's just say I try something like queen c2. b5 is not possible because of knight to e5, and ouch pants, your rook is hanging from this bishop all the way over here on the other side of the board, and you're going to be down at least a piece. So you can't really do that, and there's no other real good way. I mean, if you want to go ahead and do something like, well, you can't even really play queen to d5 because of discovered attacks. But even if you can get away with that, again, we've got this simple knight a3. And the pawn is going to be a goner. So he can't really take that pawn. I mean, he can, but it's not really very good. Opening up this bishop on g2 is not exactly what black wants to do. So he just chose knight to c6, d4. Well, this is all standard moves, by the way. Still played today to some extent, or pretty good, actually, extent. And d takes c5. And, of course, this may not necessarily be, like, the top move. I think c takes d5 is a little bit more popular. But again, we're not really worried about opening theory at this point. We're more worried about middle game ideas and also in-game strategies. So, d takes c5 was played, and this is just, again, this was theory at this point in time. So, d takes c5, bishop takes c5, a3. Now, of course, a3 has this idea of b4, and then possibly c5 at some point, move that bishop away, and then possibly bring this bishop over here to b2 and x-ray the king side. Oops. However, you may be wondering about the move a5. Is this possible? And the answer is yes, absolutely. This is also part of theory, and you won't be able to get in quite b4 yet. But it's not necessarily that worrisome. My bad. It's not really that worrisome. I can possibly just play like c takes d5, or maybe even just bishop to g5 in this position, and just continue on with my development, with the point being a3 stops his knight from coming into b4, or his bishop from coming into b4. So that's a very useful move. But okay, this was not played during the game. Black chose a6, which may seem a little strange to you. Why would you play a6 allowing b4? But when you play a5 as well, you're also kind of weakening some squares. For instance, if you played a5, b5 is weak. And I might want to bring my knight from, say, c3 over to b5 at some point, and that could be a very strong square, especially if I decide to eventually play a4. Let's just show you this real fast. If I go here, say here, and black just castles, you know, I might can get this guy in here. I might can eventually play an a4, and say these pawns eventually get traded off. Then the C and D pawns get traded off. You know, I'm looking pretty good with a nice queenside structure and space advantage. And of course, this bishop over here, don't forget, is also aiming at the queenside as well. So you gotta be a little careful weakening your kingside if you're black. So he just chose a6, b4. b6 is a much harder square for me to control. And then black chose bishop to a7, which was probably not the most accurate of moves. What was chosen here, bishop a7 wanted to continue to control, like, say, the d4 squares, and help control the center of the board, as opposed to something like bring the bishop back to d6. But also, of course, moving the bishop back to b6 would have been another option, but c5 would come with tempo at that point, so that's why bishop a7 was played. Bishop a7, decent move, I guess. It was fourth, by the way, on the computer's choices of bishop moves. Bishop e7, bishop d6 coming ahead of that, and bishop b6 as well. So, this is the point where you might start sniffing some blood. White has almost a half pawn advantage, and there are things you can do to make black's life miserable. So first, you just continue developing. Okay, black has to do the same, or else he will fall behind. So before you start an attack, one of the important things to do is keep developing your pieces, especially if the opponent has not finished developing his pieces either. And then the point is, as soon as you finish developing your pieces, that's when you go for the attack. That's exactly what Boris does here. So after the moves, bishop b2 castles kingside, he played knight bd2. And this is a good move for a couple of reasons. One is the fact that the pawn on c4 was actually hanging. Maybe I could, of course, taken that back very quickly, but you don't really want that to just stay hanging there forever. And of course, knight to d2 is a very natural move, not blocking the bishop on c3. And so, the bishop on b2 by moving out to c3. So the knight just comes to d2. Very good move. Queen to e7 was played. Now this is probably not the most accurate of moves, as explained by Boris Gulko in his book. It's you're missing some of the oncoming danger by playing this. You probably needed to play a little bit more actively. Possible moves that would have been a little bit better would have been h6, stopping some knight g5 eventual ideas, or possibly just rook to e8 and preparing advance in the center. So queen to e7, not the most accurate of decisions, but it's not a terrible move. However, the advantage is slightly increasing for white. Queen c2. Alright, so now I've basically fully developed, and now it's time to go for the attack. Queen c2. When I was actually looking over this game, I was also considering queen to b3. But queen to b3 is not necessarily as accurate, for a couple of reasons. One is I was thinking, well, let's see, if we play queen to b3, sure, c4 comes with tempo, but I was going to take it anyway. But the point is now I kind of control some of the eventual, let's say, third rank ideas. If I eventually want to move my queen over to f3 or e3, that's possible. Also, this helps support my queenside pawns a little bit more. But it's not necessarily as accurate. Because of just standard moves. I mean, it's a good move, but it's not as accurate. Queen c2 is preparing an attack, which is what I missed in the game. Queen c2 is preparing, say, a knight g5, then play bishop takes f6. For instance, in a dream world, if I could go here, then go here, I have queen takes h7, checkmate. So that's his idea. Simple little crude tactics. Of course, that can be stopped multiple different ways, but it's just an idea. So queen c2 was played, and rook d8 was played from black's point of view. This does a couple of things. One, of course, is it prepares a possibility of d4 and e5, followed by e4 and d4. That would be really strong for black, giving him a strong position in the center of the board. So rook d8 was played, and white, I would suggest you pause your video here if you're interested to see what white did. This is a very crucial moment in the game. Black is about to equalize. You must find a way to continue your attack. Do not be passive. What is the move? So hopefully you pause your clocks if you have not, or your clocks, your videos. I'm so used to doing that in chess. Pause your video if you haven't, but if you have, the move e4 is an exclam move. Point being, I am not going to sit passively. You are behind in development. You still have your bishop. That's definitely undeveloped, and there's not really a good, easy way to develop it. Your bishop on a7 is definitely not helping you out on your king side. Both these rooks are not that strong on the king side. So let's start an attack. e4, exclam. D takes e4, knight takes e4 was played, and small improvements are being made in this position. One is I have about, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces if you want to count each one of these pieces. My bad. This square and this square. These pieces all going for an attack. As opposed to black's pieces, he's got a knight and a queen. I have a huge advantage on the king side. So I brought my knight from d2 up to e4 through that exchange, and if he continues to exchange off pieces, by the way, which is something that a lot of you beginners are going to want to do, you have now gone from 2 defenders against 4 attackers to 1 defender against 3 attackers. And if you think about that mathematically, that's 50% attack to defender ratio, or defender to attacker ratio, as opposed to now 33%. So you've actually kind of hurt yourself a little bit. Now, fewer attackers do mean a less chance of an actual checkmate, but my domination of this side of the board is going to be much, much stronger. I can bring my knight in here to g5 to threaten all sorts of mating ideas at some point. Maybe I can't do that immediately. I might go with an h4 first. Maybe play h4, h5, h6. I'm going to weaken your king side, and there's nothing you can do about it because you don't have any defenders over there. I can basically do what I want to do. So that's why you don't really want to trade off pieces, and that's why Mr. Ponomariov, if that's how you pronounce it, I don't know how you pronounce it. It's a Russian name. Russian name, so I'm not going to try to. So he played knight takes e4, and black plays an exclam move e5. Well, the point here is you're not going to sit passively. You're trying to control the center of the board. Now my idea is I'm going to plop something down on d4. Probably first play bishop to g4, just so I can pin this little knight here, or not necessarily pin it, but possibly even just trade it off, and then try to cement control over d4. And if I can control the d4 square, one thing to keep in mind is if you're attacking, if you do not control the center of the board, your attack has a very, very small chance of succeeding, especially if your opponent controls the center of the board. If nobody controls it, it's not great for you for your attacks, but if your opponent controls it, you're not going to attack. It's as simple as that. So that's black's idea. So white just played a simple developable move, rook a1, and black plays bishop to g4. Now, for the longest time, I was really concerned about knight to d4 just immediately. So let's look at this real fast. Knight to d4, there's actually some tactics that involve the back rank. Believe it or not, you're like, what? Back rank? No! So the idea is knight takes f6, queen takes f6, queen to e4. Now I'm attacking both the e5 pawn and the d4 knight. Knight takes f3 is the only option, and then queen takes f3, exclam. And here you might want to play queen takes f3, but that's not possible because of rook takes d8. Checkmate, ouchtown. And then you might also just want to, say like trade rooks, for instance. That would probably be a good move. But the problem is, again, I'm threatening this mating idea with rook to d8. So say queen to e7 to avoid the double pawns, then I just go boom, and you're toast. So he's got some back rank issues. So this is what I would call a very high-level justification of a move. You look at this move and you don't want to allow it, but from a tactical point of view, you really make it a very strong case to just go ahead and allow him to do that. This is a move that I'm an expert. If I was to play this move, by expert I mean 2000, not like, I'm a chess master, but no one's a master of the game. That's what I mean. I'm an expert, but not an expert of the game. Okay. The point here is I can justify allowing his knight to come into the square because of tactics. And as a stronger player, I'd probably miss something like this and play knight to d4 myself, and I'd fall into these traps. And this is what separates the strong players from the weak players. It's as simple as that. And the men from the boys, it's just as simple as that. Or the women from the girls, that's true as well. This is very high level, and it's a deep calculation to be able to find something like knight to d4 doesn't work. So because of that, rook to d1, bishop to g4 was played. Of course, now the knight is pinned, and I'm possibly threatening to take it, or maybe just bringing some piece into d4 and just controlling that. So black's threat is to come into d4. How do you stop it? Pause your videos if you have not already. And the exclam move is c5. This is brilliant, okay? So the idea is I'm closing off black from playing, say, knight to d4, for instance, is not necessarily the best move in this situation. If I play knight to d4 now, of course my knight is pinned. Understand that, understandably so. But I can play knight takes f6, queen takes f6, and then say knight takes d4. And the point here being, if, 1 second, bishop takes b1, what's going to happen is I'm just going to take back with my rook. And after e takes d4, I'm going to be playing bishop takes b7. I'm winning all these pawns. I'm also going to be winning the d4 pawn back at some point. And it is an exchange sacrifice, but the 3 passed pawns are not going to be stopped. It's as simple as that. So this is, again, one of those high-level moves that you just gotta be able to calculate and find them. And I know I wouldn't be able to play that myself, but this is what I'm trying to accomplish. So again, this is a very high-level game, or the moves that are being allowed here. So black just went ahead and chose with knight takes e4, queen takes e4, and he went for f5. All right, so the idea of f5 is, I was saying you don't want to exchange off pieces. 1 second. Oh, never mind. I thought I was going to sneeze there. I hate that feeling when I'm about to sneeze and then I don't sneeze. It's just terrible. f5, of course, trying to shut down my attack. But really, black's position is already pretty much hopeless in this situation. And you're like, what? How is this hopeless? Well, first off, you have the bishop pair. Right. Second off, very shortly, I will have control of the D file. You'll see how I can force that pretty soon. And finally, black's weaknesses on e5 and f5, they're not going to be going anywhere, and I will eventually be able to win them at some point. Also, my bishop on g2, aiming at that b7 square, as we just saw, is also very strong. So again, take another moment here. What do you do? Well, actually, first, let me go ahead and play h3. Bishop to h5, that's just a simple move. But what do you do now? What Boris Gulko decided to do was g4. Now, this is not actually the best move according to the computer, but he gave this move an exclamation mark because, let's say, first takes, and bishop to g6. And first off, you've gained space. Now, this looks kind of weakening. It really does. But the point is now I've got a very strong, I guess, target to attack right now. And that is, well, the e5 pawn. And there's nothing you can really do about my g4 pawn. When you're looking at weaknesses on one side or the other, the main point to a weakness is the fact that it can't be defended. Can't be attacked. g4 cannot really be attacked right now, and e5 can easily be attacked. So, Boris said, you know what, I'm going to be willing to give myself a weakness to end up winning this e5 pawn eventually, or at least forcing some serious consolidations from black to save the pawn, which is actually what happened here. So first off, rook takes d1, then he chose bishop to b8. Now, why didn't you just say play rook to e8? Well, 1 second here. One of the reasons is, first off, of course, notice that bishop is still doing nothing over there on the b7 square. But really the main point behind going ahead and playing bishop to b8 is because of a funny little mate here. I can actually try rook to d5. Now I'm attacking this pawn again. And probably bishop to e4 would be black's best chance here. And then knight takes e5 exclam. Bishop takes d5 if he's just trying to go after the material, might as well. Knight to g6 check, h takes g6. Queen h3 check, king to g8. Bishop to d5. King to f8. And queen to h8 checkmate. So you kind of got to be a little careful here. And again, this is very high level. That is why rook d8 was not played. Alright. So also, of course, trying to activate this bishop really quickly. I'll also just move the bishop off the back rank and bring my rook into the action in just a moment. But I need that bishop right now. So bishop to b8 was played and queen to d2. So this is where I wanted to point out the fact that rook to e1 seems like a very natural move. But what Boris Gulko pointed out is the fact that it's not as good on e1. And sure, I may be winning a pawn, but with it at the cost of a lot of trades. And if I trade a lot of pieces, an in-game, say, with maybe bishops and queen and rook, it's going to be harder to win than playing with a positional advantage. And this is something that's higher level, as opposed to, say, trying to win material. Grandmasters always prefer positional advantages over material advantages of equivalence. That's because they're actually easier to play. So he doesn't immediately go after this pawn and chooses to play queen to d2. Point being, I'm going to run into this square right here, and there's very little you can actually do about it. And so black just chose bishop to c7. And then instead, he decided to change his plan now with the bishop to g7, goes queen to g5. All right, so this is something that I didn't see coming in the game, and something you didn't see coming in the game. You're attacking. You have this bishop, this knight, this queen, a rook coming down, and you want to trade queens. What Boris said in his book, The Lessons with Grandmasters, he says something that's very interesting. He says that the endgame would be very favorable for white. And then, the knight's going to be going to this e6 square at some point. After queen takes g5, knight takes g5. And black has just terrible weaknesses on the queen side. And, of course, the control of the d-file. So this is something that I know as an expert I can learn from. And you guys, maybe club players or experts or whoever's watching this video, can definitely learn from. The point is, if you can trade an attack for a winning endgame. And so this is probably the #1 point that I learned from this game, and I hope you do too. Be willing to trade attackers to go into a favorable endgame. So, queen to g5 exclam, and white realized that and played queen to e6. He says, you know what, I'm not going into this endgame. But now the attack is full frontal. Knight h4, bishop c2, knight to f5, a little nice intermezzo. Queen to f7, Zwischenzug, as I say in Germany. Rook to d2 was just played. Bishop to b3. Probably better would have been trying to bring that bishop back. Keep it on this diagonal, maybe with the bishop to b1 idea. Bishop to b3. And now, take a moment, pause your video one last time. What's a way to crash into the game and just end it for good? Alright, so the move is queen g7 check. Ooh! Queen takes g7, and then knight takes g7. Point being, if king takes g7, I have rook to d7, for king, the king, and the rook. So that's kind of sad for black. And so he just chose to play rook g8. Now the point, of course, is now my g4 pawn is hanging. However, you're never going to have time to take that. Oops, my bad. Knight was played to h5. And knight was played to h5, and then bishop to e6. Point is, rook c7 was coming, and I was going to be taking on b7 and all that fun stuff. So, black just decided to go with bishop d6, knight to f6, of course now defending, rook to g6, and now knight to e8. Now I'm attacking the bishop. All this is coming because of the activity of all four of my pieces, and look at his pieces. His knight on c6, not really doing anything. His bishop on e6, not really doing anything. The bishop on b2, pinning the e5 pawn. The bishop on g2, attacking the c6 knight. The knight on e8, attacking c7. The rook coming down, controlling an open file. So, this is going to be ending very quickly. Black just chose with bishop to g4. Point being now is I'm threatening bishop to f3. You got to be a little careful. Bishop to f3. So if he's threatening bishop to f3, what would be a great thing for us to allow him to do? Move to f3, right? That's exactly what we want him to do. So let's just go ahead and help him. Let's go ahead and allow him to come over here. And then we'll just pick up that bishop, of course. Now the rook is defending the g2 square. And that's all she wrote. He didn't resign immediately right here. He continued on for a couple more moves. After knight c7, rook went over to g7, knight to e8, knight to d6. Oops. Rook to e8. I was about to say, what? That doesn't make any sense. Knight to d4. Okay. I'm not entirely sure in this position why knight to d4 was played, but okay. His position is completely lost anyway. Knight to e8. Oops, yeah, okay, I thought I was wrong. Knight to e8. He played rook to g8. I was looking at a different point in time there. Rook to g8, knight to d6 was played, and then knight to d4, knight to f7 check. King to g7, knight takes e5, just slurping up pawns. Knight to e2 check. Now a good move by Boris, king h2, bishop g2. Point being is if king f2 and after rook takes e2, the bishop can be defended by a king maneuver, or king move, so he has to move his bishop at this point. Bishop to d5 was played. Now notice we do have ideas of discovered attacks with our knight, but we don't have anything too good right now. However, he did just go ahead and choose knight to d4. The idea is not just to give a check, but to flush the king out. King went over to g6. And after knight to f6, attacking the rook and the bishop, Black played rook to d8, and rook to d2 was played, and Black resigned. So this game was a very amazing game in my opinion, just of how White was willing to go into deep calculations to prove that he was better and not allowing White to or Black to play into the d4 square in the middle of the game, and also learning to trade off attackers to go into a better endgame. This is something that I'm definitely going to try to learn from. Calculation, that comes from many hours of studying. It comes from hundreds of hours of tactics and experience. So I'm good at that because I've been playing chess for a few years now, but I'm not great at that because these guys have been playing chess for decades upon decades upon decades. Yes, that's right, decades. They're so old. Well, not that old at this point, but, whatever. So, this is a very interesting game, and I really enjoyed it. Make sure you comment about it down below. Tell me what you thought you learned from it, or if you thought I could have maybe explained it in a little bit better way. If you didn't understand it, please let me know. I'll try to help you out as much as I can. But again, thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to presenting the next game for you soon. Have a good day.